Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. Jason, and introducing Sal Masekela. You might know him from multiple platforms. Right now, currently Vice World of Sports.
Yeah.
Sal, awesome to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me, man.
Previously covered the World Cup in South Africa, the Olympics, XGames for many years. But we're going to begin here with the NBA Finals in Game 6. Man, we have ourselves... Now, this game went with a little bit of controversy, we can say.
Yeah, controversy light.
And that's always something that makes the storylines a little bit more substantive to talk about when it comes to this.
For sure.
So let's get into the game itself, right? The first quarter, the Cavs hold the Warriors to 11 points. Their defense was sound. The Warriors' shooting was nowhere.
It was horrible.
Right? So that's why I took to Twitter myself, and there's been a lot of Twitter reaction going on, but I took a screenshot of the box score, and I kind of said, through one quarter, refs really can't rig that.
Right.
I mean, we had guys at the combined 2 of 15. Harrison Barnes couldn't get a shot down if his life depended on it. The second quarter, you know, they kind of build on that lead, then it starts to get cut away. LeBron James is doing... It's amazing to consider that 2015 we thought was LeBron James at his absolute peak. We've never seen anybody do what really he's done in an NBA Finals by himself. Now he's got Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson playing much better in the second half of this series. And he had the single highest game score in NBA Finals history, 42.5. Unbelievable. He's leading every team, both teams in every single stat.
In every single stat.
Right.
I mean, he's far and away the MVP at this point.
Of course, you have to. I mean, you have to hand it to him, even if they lose.
And I'm not even like I'm not in the LeBron cheering squad, but the numbers do not lie.
Right. That's the evidence is there. What else could we say about it? Last year he probably deserved it too. This year he's outdoing himself already. So in terms of the first half, before we get into the Steph Curry mouth guard, before we get into the ejection, there was a couple fouls on Curry that were called. He got into foul trouble early. 3 of which I felt were warranted. 3 of which we were discussing before the show. I'd love you to get into this. Has to do with, as you mentioned, as you put it, an emotional pendulum. Yeah.
For me, I think if you look at how bad the Warriors were playing, they ended up shooting, somewhere around 41% for the game. They played horribly. Yet, they were still able to claw from these 21-point swings to cut it to 11. At one point, cut it to 8.
Yes.
These fouls came at inopportune times when you look at the emotional momentum, that pendulum swing of a game. That they called the first few games of this series in a way where I think one of the highlights story-wise was that it was like, wow, the refs are really letting them play. They sort of set a line for what was going to be allowed and what you weren't going to get freebies.
Yes.
And so the game moved, albeit there were blowouts, but at least that wasn't one of the star characters of the game. But last night I felt like that first blocking foul that Steph got when LeBron dropped the shoulder.
Right.
To me, that's a crazy one. And all of a sudden, you've got this momentum. You got to regroup from that. Those type of fouls change the course of a game when a team is trying to make a comeback. And I don't know if it was by design or not, but they came at very strange times, including the last foul, which was a joke. And LeBron James is a great player. He's also a great actor.
Yes, he is.
If there were an Oscars in the NBA for Best Actor, for Best Pretender, for Best All-Around Flopper with greatness attached to his name, LeBron James gets all the votes. And he did a deft job of it last night. And if you're a Cleveland fan, you're like, great, that's part of the game. But for me, it left a little bit of a taste.
You know, it's interesting because when I see Iguodala flop and it causes a turnover,
right,
you're doing what to get the ball back in your possession. So I understand flopping. Can you get rid of it in sports? No, you fine them. It happens in world football all the time.
Right.
But so in this situation, you know, LeBron got the call against Curry for the 6th foul. Again, we could discuss it all the time. And you mentioned the shoulder drop, by the way. I don't know what the ref was really seeing there because you see it. Okay, let's do the 360 Intel Panoran vision of this. Curry's feet are planted. LeBron's shoulder is dropped. Curry gets sent 5 yards back at least. You got to call a foul there, but even worse was probably the Kyrie Irving strip, which was as clean as it was clean.
It was clean as can be, and you imagine that turns into a fast break, and that's momentum, and that's easy transition basket. That's emotional energy and pride, And that's what fuels the game. That's why basketball is a game of runs.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, too, to point out because, Steph Curry, for all we know, pops up at the three-point line, hits a three in transition. Because I saw that was one thing that actually frustrated me a little bit with Klay Thompson in the third quarter. He decided, and the Warriors get away with this because they regularly make those shots. We saw through the regular season, their shooting percentages were through the roof. So it was never something you criticized when Klay Thompson denied an easy layup run to step back to the baseline and take a three-pointer, and it goes in. You go,
we saw that in this series.
Right. We just saw it happen in Game 6, and you go, well, that's a Klay Thompson play. But when he misses it, it's like the other. It's like when I always put it like the NFL, when you make a really ballsy call and it goes your way. That's only Bill Belichick would have thought of that. But if you don't make that call, the coach goes, well, no, that's the worst coaching decision of all time, the Pete Carroll effect with Russell. If that's a touchdown, that's the greatest call of all time.
You could take a Russell Westbrook and you could put him in that conversation easily, which may or may not have been part of their demise.
Of course.
On the back end of that series.
Right. So let's get, of course, now to the mouth guard. So that fan took one to the face, and I'm surprised. Of course, people immediately were like, well, you got to sell that on eBay. Like, that fan, man. And it's funny because let's get to Steph Curry, because he discussed the mouth guard in the press conference, and he had such a, we talk about LeBron being a good actor. He's also great with the media. So is Steph Curry. Have a listen at least to what he said in the post game.
Before, I usually aim at the scores table. I was off aim. Definitely didn't mean to throw it at a fan, but it happened, and went over and apologized to him because that's obviously not where I was trying to take my frustration out. I've never been ejected before, so it was a weird feeling, but it was just frustration, and also kind of, like you said, I thought it was kind of hilarious the way the last two fouls and me blowing up kind of unfolded. At the end of the day, 7 games to figure out who's going to be holding that trophy on Sunday. You got to love that kind of environment and that battle. So haven't enjoyed it much the last two games, but 48 minutes left.
I love how, this is a guy who saw his, one of the most valuable guys on his team, Draymond Green, get suspended for a game.
Right.
He had some brutal calls go against him in Game 6, yet he's the one sitting there at the podium saying, oh, Game 7, who doesn't want that?
Right. What I personally like about Steph's way of dealing with the media is he didn't verbally say, I'm going to take the high road.
Right. Which is what LeBron does.
But he clearly is demonstratively saying to you, I'm taking the high road, but without ever having to say it. Like, he never has to go into that third person, like, let's take a look at me from the outside of me. And I think that's what is kind of, people are like, well, why doesn't he get the memes? Why doesn't he get, the same kind of shit talk and the internet doesn't torch him the way LeBron gets? And I don't think that he's behaved in some of the ways off the court that LeBron has earned that we're never going to forget. Like, we're never going to forget the announcement.
Of course.
And that's what people are like, you're a hater. No, I'm not a hater. The dude's a great, great, great player. But he has done some things and said some things that has put himself out there in a way where you're like, I'm never going to forget that. I'm sorry.
Right. David, I've mentioned an article, I think after Game 5 from David Aldridge, NBA.com writer who was discussing LeBron James' legacy, and he said, there's two sides of the coin here. If you defend LeBron James, you're a jock sniffer, you're a fanboy, as he put it.
Right.
If you argue against LeBron James, you're just a hater.
Right.
Well, whatever happened to that casual bar conversation where you're sitting there going back and forth between the guys that are the greatest of all time?
Right.
It's amazing because, to me, it's like, at least from my generation, I look back on Michael Jordan as the greatest of all time. And I remember a little bit of Jordan growing up, not all of it, but years from now, no one's going to say LeBron James was this, or that. They're going to say he was one of the greatest of all time.
Exactly.
Here's one little statistic to kind of prove what he's been doing so far. He's leading everyone in everything.
Bing.
Except for rebounds, he's tied for first. Because Tristan Thompson put up a 15-15 last night.
Tristan Thompson played completely out of his skin.
Yeah.
I want to know what they shot him with last night. And maybe we should find out whether or not it was legal.
Well, I want to find out where I can get it so my pickup game gets a little bit better.
Exactly. I mean, he played incredible. But if the one thing that I think, if you look at the box score, that perhaps can serve the Warriors is that overall, the Cavalier bench is still pretty horrible.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, as far as a cast of players is concerned, the Warriors still have the edge on paper. It's whether or not those dudes decide to truly step up in the ways they did in games 1 and 2. Remember, like, we weren't even talking about Steph or Klay Thompson in games 1 and 2.
No. We're talking about Sean Livingston. That's
Right.
absolutely true. We were talking about, I'm not sure why I'm blanking on we're talking about Sean Livingston. We're talking about Mo Spates. We're talking about Festus Ezeli. We're talking about how deep that bench
Exactly.
really goes. Harrison Barnes was better,
Right.
at least in games 1 and 2.
And those dudes, they did not handle they haven't handled their business the last 2 games.
Right. But what's going to be interesting about a Game 7 situation is LeBron's going to likely play 46.5 minutes. They're going to sit him for all of, what, a minute, 2 minutes?
He played all of the fourth quarter last night.
Oh, he played all the fourth quarter. And on top of that, you know, it's interesting with LeBron because there was a point where the 27 points scored between like the 6-minute mark of the third quarter and like the 10-minute mark of the fourth quarter were either scored or assisted by LeBron. It was either lobs to Tristan Thompson or he was hitting turnaround jumpers, attacking the rim, even finding his three-point range. It's one of those things where do they have an answer to actually stop him? Remember, this was before the finals, the main storyline. Iguodala's the LeBron stopper. That's
yeah,
why
well,
the Warriors
that
win this series.
Iguodala
His back is crunched.
couldn't be a door stopper at
His
this
back
point.
looks a little rough.
He looked like he was in spasm heaven.
Yeah.
Last night, and that's a problem. But that being said, I think by design there are ways to make it difficult for LeBron to A, get the ball, and B, when he does get the ball, don't give a 6'9", 10, 240-ish, 40 to 75 pound superhero. The dude's a mutant. He's not a real human. Right. He could be an X-Men.
Right.
Don't let this dude get a 3 or 4 step running start to the basket. It's a wrap. There's nothing you can do when he starts going downhill. However, you can make it difficult. You can force him to pass. Get the ball into some of those dudes' hands and make them work. I'm not saying you can stop him or Kyrie, but you can take the same approach that Cleveland took on the Warriors in games 1 and 2. Deny, and force those other guys to be great. LeBron's still going to get his I'd rather you force doing that and let LeBron get his 25, 27, maybe even 30, but he can't be if he's scoring 40-plus points a game, it's a wrap.
You make a very strong point in that one and a smart point because 3-4 steps, you can't let LeBron get 2.
Right.
And there's so many times where you saw the isolation sets. And the Warriors, unfortunately, they weren't reacting because once LeBron started exploiting that, and this is like end of the third quarter, that's where the lobs to Tristan Thompson came because all 10 eyes were on LeBron.
Right.
And Tristan Thompson didn't even have to make hard cuts. We're talking about like sneaking.
He's
quiet
coming in
footsteps.
like just wide open.
He's like, am I supposed to be
over
here?
here?
He's like, am I supposed to be here right
Yeah.
now? Why am I under the rim? And he throws it right up against the lob down.
I think the Warriors played last night. For the first time that I saw it, they looked like they were scared shitless of LeBron James.
Yeah, and to be fair, credit to Kyrie Irving. That mid-range baseline jumper is starting to look like the most coveted shot in the NBA.
He's a beast. This whole experiment of Curry, for whatever little nobility's sake of him trying to defend, no. Klay Thompson on Kyrie Irving, that's it. That's the only, and then Klay has to do work.
And you just gotta hope that the Kyrie offense doesn't trump the Klay defense because in Game 5, Klay was playing great defense.
Awesome.
Kyrie was just showing off better offense.
Don't go away from that.
Yeah, you got to stick to that.
Don't go away from that.
That's a last point we got to make too. Is there's a lot of reaction to Klay Thompson walking off the court before the end of the game.
Right.
Why isn't Klay getting the memes and tweets? Why isn't Klay getting this? And of course, you look a little bad when you say maybe he got his feelings hurt to LeBron James after the Draymond Green suspension or right before that with the talk back and forth, and then and you kind of just walk off the court before the end of the game. I ripped apart the Thunder for doing that.
Yeah, I think the Warriors overall look soft.
Yeah.
I think they looked physically soft. They looked like they were afraid, and they also that whole like emotional thing at the back end of the game. Like, yo, you're going back to your house.
Yeah, it's a great point.
You're going back to your house where you run fools, and we're talking about the championship.
To cap off the 73.
Exactly. You've played the greatest season ever. You're going back to your house. You can't walk around with that kind of that kind of like head down, like, you think that doesn't travel with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to see on Sunday.
It's going to be a Sunday for the making. It's also going to be
Father's Day. There's a bunch of dads who are like, yes!
Get the grill going.
I thought I was going to have to negotiate to watch basketball. Now, look, I don't have to even like do any of this Father's Day shit. They have to worship me in front of the television watching sports. It's my day.
To all the fathers out there, they'll enjoy Game 7.
You've won.
That is an all-around W for the fathers out there. All right, Sal, where can we find you on Twitter? Where can we find you on Instagram?
On Twitter, at Sal Masekela. Instagram, at Sal Masekela.
All right. Make sure
I'll keep it simple.
That's good. We'll check it out on the social media. We'll put the social media in the description box below. We're over at TYT Sports on Twitter. Make sure to comment below with what you think about Game 6 of the NBA Finals. Who's taking it all in Game 7 of the NBA Finals? We'll see you later.